Just when you thought Season 8 couldn't get any weirder, Blizzard drops the Mauga nerf mid-season patch with some of the most questionable patch notes. Another Ananade nerf, Orissa's fall-off removed entirely, and a Sojourn buff after she's been the most consistently played DPS since her launch. We're also expecting some really weird changes coming in Season 9, so it's not looking like things are going to be slowing down anytime soon. But for right now in Season 8, there are a lot of change-ups in the DPS tier list, and it's not just Mauga's appearance and disappearance that have shaken things up. If you're looking to grind to get better on tanks, use the link in the description to get access to a Game Leap membership, with guides for both mechanically intensive tanks like Doomfist and Junker Queen on top of macro courses on how to best play Winston strategically. There's a lot of options for whatever hero you're trying to learn, so check it out and enjoy the video. Starting of course at F tier is Pharah, and once again she still hasn't gotten her mobility adjusted for more dynamic and faster gameplay. It's been several seasons now that we've been waiting on Pharah to get anything. Devs have talked about overhauling her movement, and meanwhile we're waiting on her to get any sort of change while she isn't even really playable at all. Even though she's always been reliant on Mercy to be effective, it's never felt as bad as it is now. More heroes than ever have easy ways to poke Pharah out of the fight or even just kill her the moment she gets into range. Pharah is so bad that even Mauga being nerfed and dropping hard in pick rate means barely anything for her. It used to be that at least Pharah was untouched by most tanks, but now even Winston can reliably poke her. We've definitely gotten pretty far compared to Overwatch 1. Moving up to D tier is Widowmaker, but it's more of a symbolic spot. She's actually slightly worse off in this patch because Mauga compositions actually allowed for good Widow players to play uncontested with everybody locking the Brawl tank with no shield. As usual, top Widowmaker players can carry, but she's also still really easily countered and picked off. Any good dive hero, and even some of the worst ones, can still take time out of the fight to take her on. Because of how purely mechanics-based she is, it's obvious that she'll be good in the right hands, but on average, even with one-shots at your disposal, it's pretty hard to survive and consistently get picks to make up for your zero utility and low tank damage. Now for C tier. They're still as high skill as the rest of the roster, but they don't get as much value. The first one being Cassidy, who also hasn't been good for most of Overwatch 2. It really feels like Sojourn has just always outclassed him. She gets more picks, wins the range duel, and is way harder to kill. It's not even like Cassidy's kit is that bad, he just has the biggest hitbox out of all the mid to long range DPS. The fall-off changes have really made him tragically weak in long range too. His damage on tanks isn't even that good, and you can forget about taking long off angles. You always have to put yourself in danger to get picks, and unlike Sojourn's slide, your roll doesn't take you very far, although it does reduce a lot of damage. He exists and deals damage, but there are way better options that also aren't burdened by having Deadeye as their ultimate. It has its highs and lows, but because it's so easy to kite or block, it's mostly lows. Next up is Reaper, who's down from his high of being one of the best DPS both with and against Mauga. But without must-pick Mauga in the meta, Reaper's got no coattails to ride on. There are a few tanks that Reaper is good into, but there are far too many viable tanks that can match him no problem. Junker Queen, D.Va, Orisa, Sigma, even some of the bigger tanks still have ways to beat him, like Rein and Ram with their shields that block lifesteal, or Mauga and Hog with their damage reduction and high burst damage. Even though Reaper doesn't only focus tanks, it's pretty necessary to be able to win the duel against them when the fight comes down to it. How are you supposed to start snowballing off of your damage when you get stopped as soon as you meet the tank? Dealing some of the highest close range damage in the game does make you a threat, just an easily manageable one. Now onto one of the few DPS that got changed this patch, Sombra. But clearly if she's still in C tier, she hasn't gotten changed enough. 3 buffs to her stealth passive sounds like a lot, but they're all minor changes. To summarize them, you can now enter stealth faster when you spawn and when you leave an objective, and you also have a longer period of time to cancel your stealth right after it starts and still be able to shoot immediately. Weird sounding changes, but they all help her out. It's just that quality of life changes aren't really going to make a difference in how strong she is. Her EMP and damage are good. She's just such a vulnerable hero now. Prioritizing her as soon as you see her will often directly lead to her dying. It's really easy to both chase the Sombra and just one-shot her as soon as she shows up. Her new Translocator is definitely a downgrade from her old one, and the rest of her kit can't keep up. Just one more hero until B tier, and it's Junkrat. Unpredictable, counterable, and inconsistent, he really would be much lower on the list if he weren't so good at controlling closed areas. So good in fact that he can win almost any duel in a room, even against tanks. Most people feel like Junkrat is weak, but flankers and tanks know how annoying he can be to play into. Junkrat is played in quite high ranks still, but he's also massively dependent on the map. King's Row is a winner, but Havana not so much. As a hero, he is objectively weak. Big hitbox, slow damage, and low range. They're easily exploitable weaknesses that make even the best Junkrat players struggle. Now for B tier, the confirmed average to above average group, starting with Torbjorn. He's actually already a pretty big jump from average since he's in one of the best states he's ever been. Sure, there's a lot of high damage poke that can both destroy you and your turret, but your own damage and overload make it really easy to fire back and not die immediately when focused. Tracer is still really good, so Torb is a chill option to match her and keep your team alive. You don't need to be a super carry to be a good hero, sometimes marking someone is enough. Unfortunately, even though Torb is a good hero on paper, his turret is pretty weak, and Molten Core is one of the least consistent ultimates. You'll probably win most of your games by playing him, but you're also going to get shut down quite a lot. Next up is Hanzo, pretty low for such a high skill cap. The problem is in how inconsistent he is. Hitting headshots is necessary to justify playing him since every other thing he does gets outclassed by another DPS. As a DPS, you have to either get picks or focus the tank, and it's really easy to do neither as Hanzo. Depending on the tank, Hanzo might not even be that good into them, and getting enough picks to outvalue another DPS that either takes space or farms a tank is tough. It's a similar type of responsibility for Widowmaker, just just Hanzo is more flexible in his targets. On to another B tier spam hero, we have Soldier 76, fittingly the most balanced DPS in the game right now. The only exception is Tactical Visor, which is pretty situational. It's not the best, but it still turns heads and counters dives. Otherwise, he does everything he needs to do. He shoots, he runs away, and his healing station is good, but not too oppressive with how long the cooldown is. We probably won't see him change for a while because he's in such a good spot. For a simple hero, he's pretty flexible, which is about the best you can hope for in Overwatch. Moving on to the next hero is a different take on simple. It's Bastion. Not as self-sustainable, but with way higher damage. He's still hard to kill, it's just that you need your supports to both be playing the right heroes and be pocketing you intentionally. Soldier doesn't have that problem, but he also doesn't have 360 DPS in his backpack. Bastion's third form is still really good. The best option to counter it is still just baiting it and kiting back. But recent patches have made him a lot more vulnerable after he's used it. With only 3 in B tier left to go, the third spot goes to Symmetra. She may still have the stigma of being a weird off-meta hero, but she's really well balanced right now. It's mostly that her teleporter is pretty unconventional when it comes to mobility, but it's not hard to use at all. Symmetra used to be known as either the one-trick pick or the full coordination rush pick, but her range damage right now is awesome. You can easily keep up with a DPS average of 10k damage per 10 minutes. And of course, damage heroes don't often have crazy game-turning ultimates, but Photon Barrier definitely fits that description. Next up is Ashe, and actually with Bob now that Mauga's not in every game. He was really the worst possible ultimate to use into Mauga, but now even with Ramattra and Orisa headshotting him, he's at least taking valuable attention instead of evaporating instantly. Ashe is once again a well-rounded hero with a reliable ultimate, high burst damage at close and long range, and really high vertical mobility. Even Dynamite is amazing both in duels and at punishing large groups of players, meaning Ashe can handle both dive and brawl comps easily, while being a part of spam comp herself. Being so versatile makes her a solid option on most maps and with most teams. And at the top of B tier is Mei, who's still a really great pick in a lot of matchups. Most players only see Mei as a close range option, but her secondary fire is amazing for getting long range picks. Her damage really ramps up when you prioritize your icicles over your spray, but even your primary fire is a really useful slow that counters a lot of heroes on its own. Also, with not as much high spam damage in the game anymore, your ice wall stays up longer. Mei is actually secretly amazing into dive heroes with how effective her wall is at blocking off support sidelines. Her primary and secondary fire are also especially perfect in the Genji and Tracer. Although Blizzard is very counterable with Suzu or Life Grip or Fortify or Overrun or a ton of other abilities, you can still take space by just having it ready, and you'll probably find that you can force those same countering abilities with a few good icicle shots. Although Mauga took Reaper down with him, Mei is already a classic pick for high utility and high mechanics and DPS form. Now into A tier, the really trusted picks. The first one is Genji, and though he's totally still a good hero, he's one of the weakest defensively. He really gets shredded by a lot of popular heroes. What makes Genji still a top pick despite having a big hitbox for a flanker is that Deflect is an amazing ability. People will still shoot Deflect in 2024 and probably for a long time after. You can even force players to shoot it by dueling someone in close range, timing your Deflect to finish off your target. It's obviously not ideal to get it forced before the fight starts, but it means that you also don't have to retreat unbelievably far if someone tries to fight you as you're setting up. Poking and flanking and looking for an entry and then diving in still works. You even have more tools to help you engage than ever before, with Queen, Kiriko, and even Mauga supporting you with their abilities and damage. It's a hard realization, but Genji is actually really good. It's just been a long time and you can still get countered so hard. It's not the easiest, but it's definitely easier with the next hero, Echo, one of the best heroes to solo carry with of all time. She's pretty simple for a very complex moving character because she's all about flight and damage. She's also amazing on almost every map. Only Widowmaker maps like Havana and Junkertown make it seriously difficult to play. Everything else goes easy breezy. What really makes Echo crazy is high level duplicate usage. Most players pick the tank, but Ana, Baptiste, and Mei are amazing copy targets that instantly turn the fight in your favor. After all, Echo can get to places that they normally can't, and then become them. Moving on to the top of A tier, Tracer is next, still in perfect form with 6 damage per bullet. Instant mobility and regular burst damage will always be top tier in the right hands. Tracer is a mix between a fragger and a point guard. Carrying tough games means you might have to be on the payload quite a lot, but it's obviously to make your next fight that much more winnable. But even though Tracer's in a great form and can do so much, unbelievably Blizzard has made Sojourn, who is already a more reliable pick than Tracer, even better. That's why Tracer's not in S tier, because seriously, who can be at the same tier as Sojourn if she's already the most impactful DPS and now is even better into matchups where she can't build railgun charge as easily? That was probably the only weakness she had. Her mobility and damage are perfect, and she's super hard to pin down and can turn the duel on you at any moment. And of course her hitbox is skinnier than most, and it used to be even smaller too. It's yet another patch with Sojourn being the best. Giving her a buff makes it seem like they're testing to see if people actually read the patch notes. That's it for the DPS tier list of mid-season 8. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.